because the way I think of activism for me, it looks very differently. It's not necessarily just protesting on the front lines. I think that's great. But what about being an activist in the way in which you have decided to be one? What inspired you? What did it look like? You said you raised money for Black Lives Matter. What did you do?
Mhm.
Walk us through everything that you did and how you find yourself in this moment right now.
So for me, it was 3 years ago. I had like a string of festivals, and I decided that I was going to wear T-shirts with a message on them because I figured, what better, what better time to use a platform than in front of a bunch of people. So one of the T-shirts I wore was, "If you want to change the system, speak up. White silence is pro-racism. The whole thing." And it didn't really it kind of got swept under the rug back then. But when all this stuff started happening again, and it's been happening, the police brutality against innocent black people, I was like, man, I'm not the biggest artist in the world, and I certainly don't have the most white fans in the world, but I got a good amount of people that I can definitely mobilize and turn into some money. And I know they're down for the cause because it's merch, it's a good thing. And I've always been outspoken anyway, And so, how am I going to be in black culture and not be outspoken about racism?
And then I got to ask you this because you grew up in Atlanta, so that gives you a heads
Mhm.
up, depending for so many people, because you're in the crux of that beautiful black city where there are so many wonderful black leaders, home of so much great music and things that speak to our culture right now. And we are really getting our word out, especially with this platform today, and saying
Mhm.
that we must use our voice to vote. Talk to me about what the importance of voting for you in this upcoming election.
Yeah, so full transparency, I had never voted before, ever. Um, and because I was one of those people who was like, my vote doesn't matter, and and I don't know, maybe it's because I was younger, maybe it's because I really thought that, or I don't know, but I just think that it's got to, now this is a bit of a privilege to say it's got to a breaking point for me because obviously it's been past the breaking point for Black people, but I think that as a whole, the young people need to get out and vote because we're the ones that never show up. You know what I mean? We never show up to vote, but we're the future. So it's like, look, we got to go out there and vote, and then whatever happens, happens. But at least we did our part. You got to do your
You know,
part.
you're very candid in saying that you just decided to vote, and I think there's a beautiful irony in the fact that you have your fans saying, "Because of you, I'm voting."
Right.
And there's something beautiful about that. But I want to know why now for you. Why in this moment is it important for you to vote? And what hit your spirit to say, yes, this is the time to do it?
Honestly, because I think that George Floyd really uh, woke up a lot of people who, including myself, who I was vocal and outspoken about racism. I put it in my lyrics. I put it on T-shirts. I would talk about it in interviews. I was vocal about it. But that video in that moment, I think me along with a lot of other people just kind of was like, all right, like words are simply not enough anymore. We gotta do something, whether it's raising money, whether it's voting or all the above. Like we got to do something, and I'm ashamed that it took that for me to be like, I need to raise money and I need to vote. It's a shame, and I don't know. I guess it snapped a bunch of people out of it. And even if you were vocal and whatnot, it's time to actually put your money where your mouth is. It's time to go vote. It's time to just stop talking about it and be about it. And it's been time for that, but like I said, I'm ashamed that it took me this long to actually really be about it, but I'm here now.
So, Russ, we all know that this is going to be your first time voting. Tell me what that
Yeah.
experience is going to be like for you in terms of what you're excited about.
I think you know what it's gonna do for me. It's gonna let me know that I'm contributing to something bigger than myself, and I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm being about it because for so long, and I know I'm not alone with this, but standing on the outside and just screaming about this and that and this should change it's like, all right, but did you vote? you know and so I know it's going to feel good to know that I played a small role, And that's the problem. I think the mentality of like my vote doesn't matter needs to be changed to my vote, albeit small, does matter. It's a role I'm playing, and if I play my part and you play your part, and he and she plays their part, then we make a difference. But it'll feel. I have a feeling it's gonna it's gonna feel very, very big. You realize that giving actually feels better than receiving. That's when you start wanting to do your part and contribute. So, voting is an easy way to give. You know.
Yeah. To whom much is given, much is required, and you have been given a huge platform, and we are so grateful for you, Russ. Philanthropist, artist, community activist, first time voter. We appreciate you for doing
Yes.
this, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, la la.
So, cities like Atlanta and Chicago have been at the forefront of the discussions, especially now in this country when we're talking about COVID-19 and systemic racism, as well as police brutality and what we can do in this country. Again, we're continuing our conversation, letting you know that your voice is your vote and your vote is your voice. We can change where we are in this country. Currently, I'd like to welcome in Chicago Cubs right fielder Jason Hayward. I appreciate you. I brought in Atlanta and Chicago because I know you grew up in the metropolitan area of Atlanta, more specifically McDonough. Let's be technical, and and you have been very vocal throughout this entire time in terms of what our country's been experiencing. Let's look at the past month and a half, if you will. What has been the hardest thing for you to deal with?
The hardest thing for me to deal with, Carrie, this last month has just been going from the virus shutting everything down to us being called to action. We've had multiple police brutality situations. We've had people protesting, wanting to get the message out. But I really realized that I need to be a part of the positive message. And hear from a reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved.
A reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved, which leads us to More Than a Vote. It is a beautiful collective of Black athletes and artists. You are a part of that. Talk to me about why that's important for you right now, and this be a part of that collective.
To me personally, it's important to be a part of that because I've somewhat used baseball and my craft as an excuse to not get more involved in voting. But I can't any longer use baseball and work as an excuse not to get educated and not also to show people like at any moment in time, any walk of life, we can make a difference.
So tell me in your words, what does activism look like for you?
In my words, it looks like LeBron James, the biggest athlete right now on the planet, speaking up and breaking the ice for everyone. And I think for the first time, people see and hear from us. So now we have white teammates, we have other people speaking up and realizing, okay, like this is how we go about doing this. And to me right now, social media, athletes speaking up, entertainers speaking up, like we're trying to do with More Than a Vote.
You said something I thought was so key because covering sports for so long, I know that it's tough for Black players specifically in Major League Baseball to talk about how they feel. Adam Jones did it in a very eloquent way early on, but there are very few that are vocal. You said you all were afraid. Why use that word and why were you afraid?
You was afraid because in 2019, there were 68 of us total. And there are 38 teams. There's 25-man roster on each team. There's a 40-man roster, which is on each team as well. And there aren't many of us. So we're outnumbered in that sense, but not always in a negative way when it comes to our teammates and our clubhouses. But to get to this point, you have to move a certain way. You got to be careful what you say. You can't ruffle feathers. You can't come off in any way. Much like other Black entertainers, much like yourself, probably having to live through life every day. But to get to the highest level, you got to button up. You got to be seen and not heard. So baseball is, like I said, it was time for us to try and speak up and make a difference and show it's okay to do so because we can't be quiet any longer.
That is a button up, be quiet, be seen but not heard. That is an expression that a lot of Black folks can relate to in whatever aspect of professionalism that they experience, especially if they don't work for themselves. They just feel that. That is also a socialization that we have as Black folks, well, especially like you said, if you want to get to the higher level. And for so long, I felt it bubbling right underneath the surface that so many of us who were in whatever positions we were, who had platforms, were tired of pretending and looking the other way and spending so much time making others comfortable while we were uncomfortable. Do you feel that this is the type of movement that is sustainable, or is it just for a time?
No, it takes everyone joining in on the conversation. And right now, I feel like more than ever, there is little things as possible to distract from bigger issues. And we saw on draft day, we saw our president Theo Epstein holding up the sign saying Black Lives Matter and wanting to
Yeah,
include the rest of
yeah.
MLB in that. But now we're having those conversations as well. So I definitely think this is sustainable. And it's not always just going to be the popular thing to do. This is something that people want to get right because they know we care.
Jason, you said you think it's sustainable, that what you're seeing, especially with your colleagues in baseball, that this can be something where you're feeling more comfortable, feeling more safe to share how you feel about social injustice and police brutality. What are you doing right now in this moment with your platform to help change how we look at voting and how to educate the culture and the community about voting?
Well, first, what I'm doing, Carrie, is joining up with More Than a Vote and joining up with other athletes and entertainers to get that message out and use our platform in that sense as a group. And try to create a brand with this to make it something that's not just about the election coming, make sure that it's about people getting educated for years to come and figure out where to vote and how to vote. We've got people in different areas that cover different demographics and influence different areas of people. And as a baseball player, as a black baseball player, I feel like now, like we talked about, is finding the time to show people that you can use your voice in this profession. You don't have to be afraid. And to me, that can help someone, help a kid growing up. He can see me, he can see other guys that were in the video we posted saying, hey, this is what they're standing for. They're speaking up for these things, and it's okay to want to play baseball. It's not lame. It's not something I have to be as afraid of as I was before. So I feel like that's my role in this. I have a younger brother as well. He's 24. He also plays baseball. So I've got to lead by example. I can't just always, come up with a good answer that sounds good on TV. When I get asked a question on, what do we need to do to make changes? I'm joining up here to make sure that I take action and get educated myself. For one, so many people, I feel like in Atlanta, they're on the move. Or when you want to try to make a vote and try and cast your vote, you have to do it by mail. You have to sign up for the absentee ballot. Then you have to get another ballot in return. They have to send it back to you. Well, for me personally, they didn't send that back until it was too late, right? We didn't get it in the mail to the address that's an Atlanta address at my parents' house. We didn't get that in the mail until it was too late. And then from other friends and family that are still in Georgia right now, I just hear about them being held in lines too long and trying to get off work. And we know how it is for any family, but let alone a black family in a city or in the suburbs trying to take care of their family and trying to provide for them. You try to get off work, and then you're like, wait a minute. You start looking at the clock. It's like, oh, this is not going to happen today, right? And so I saw, Mayor Keisha Bottoms, reach out via social media to people and say, hey, I'm going to address these issues right now. I need y'all to stay in line to cast your votes. Keep hanging in there. So to me in Georgia, that's what that looks like.
Well, it's interesting that you even bring that up because there have been all these images, specifically from Georgia, because that's such a battleground, where you see people, especially when it came to the primaries, doing whatever it takes. And this is real life voter suppression that you're talking about. It's been happening for decades. It's not fake. What you're saying, these examples of sending you your ballot too late after the fact or shutting down the polls at 6 o'clock while people still are in line, that's a real life issue. There needs to be some type of change. And I think that what we're doing right now is fair. But the idea of voter suppression, do you think that that is well known, especially with folks, within the generation, your generation?
I think it's known in our communities, right? I don't think it's spoke on enough. I don't think there's been enough light drawn to it. Bring it to light. Let people hear about it. Let people learn about what that looks like, and get more people to say, okay, look, like this is going to happen. We have to expect this, and we can no longer make the excuse. We can't say they didn't warn us.
Jason, everybody knows, or it feels as if everyone knows that the time is now. America's paying attention to us. We have their eyes, we have their ears. If you look toward the future, what are you most excited about in terms of seeing a change?
I'm excited about how fast the word is traveling. The word is being spread right now. The biggest athletes, the biggest icons, biggest entertainers are doing their part, but I'm also seeing people out there on the streets doing their part. When so many things got lost, could have very easily got in the in the commotion when it came to protests, and you saw rioting, you saw looting. People still stood their ground, and people still went out there and said, "Look, we're doing this for the right reasons. We're going to come together. We're going to use drones. We're going to use social medias." I feel like this is a new wave of getting things done the right way and just spreading the message.
You're right about that. And you're right. People are spreading the word unapologetically. We out here. We doubling down. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Right.
Yeah, la la.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to welcome a friend, a brother, family member, if you will, former colleague, NBA great, sports analyst, philanthropist. He does it all. And he's here to give us his time and his platform to talk about something that is so important, and that is voting. Everybody, welcome Jalen Rose to We the People. Talk to me about how important it is for the people who know you and love you and look up to you. Why is it so important that you use your platform to talk about voting?
Initially, we have to get past the stigma of the mental systemic racism that comes with the presidential race, governors, mayors, senators, judges. We've been conditioned to believe that our vote does not matter. So usually when we looked up at all of those races and people that were running, not only did they not look like us, we didn't believe they were there to represent our best interests. So therefore, as a collective, we didn't mobilize until Barack Obama, and we felt a sense of hope that finally our country is going to do something that we felt would never happen in our lifetime. And I remember being at the inauguration in 2008. I made sure I was there. And we voted. In 2016, we didn't vote, Carrie. We didn't vote. And so many people try to make this political. This is not political. Me telling somebody to vote is like telling somebody to pay taxes. So that's one, getting over the stigma of nobody is going to represent our best interest. And then number two, the reality is that the person that gets the most votes doesn't necessarily win the presidency. That's uncomfortable right there, because that's actually what took place in 2016. The Electoral College chose the president. And if you put all of their pictures up, I'm pretty sure they look a lot more like each other than they look like you and I. How about that? And then the third thing, especially in urban environments, oh man, they create barriers for us, Carrie. It's like you got to jump over the fence, you got to run past the dog, you got to jump on the hood of the car. The lines is 5 hours long. You get up to the poll and they don't work. Elderly people working in the city, while they got the young people who understand technology working in the suburbs. Like, these are all systematic things that try to discourage us from voting. And then finally, we don't have a day off to vote. We need to work. So we don't get a day off. It's going to be a full day, and I got to work to pay my bills. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mail in vote. And you know what you want people to realize? That counts too. So your vote will be counted if you're able to mail it in. So those are a few things that I hope that we can do in mobilizing. Shout to LeBron and his team. Shout to you and everybody involved. We will make a difference.
Well, let's talk about more than a vote. There is a Black collective of athletes, of artists coming together and saying voter suppression is a real deal, especially in the Black community. When you just talked about, I got to work, so I can't go vote. And then when we do get in the booth, just in case we don't have to work, do we know who we're voting for? Not only do we have to vote, we got to be educated. And it's not always even about the man who's in office or the woman who's in office for president. It's about your local elections. It's about the people who are your DAs, your state DAs, like the people who actually make change in your community, who will change police brutality, who will make sure that your community is taken care of, who will defund police and hope that they can help you in stopping police brutality. So talk to me about why you decided to be a part of More Than a Vote and what
quote was, "I wish America loved black people as much as it loves black
Mm-hmm.
culture." And
Mm-hmm.
this collective, by the way, represents in a lot of ways what's encouraging, but also sometimes disappointing about our role as black people in America. Because we were brought here as labor and to entertain. And we use those vehicles to get paid and move to the
Mm-hmm.
suburbs and be the idols of white kids. And so now that we have this collective, I would say sports and entertainment represent the most powerful group of black men in the United States. I'm talking about money, power, celebrity, the ability to mobilize, community involvement,
Yes.
their leadership, their intellect. And so to have all of us pull it in the same direction at the same time for anything that we're passionate about is going to be a difference maker, but it's definitely going to be a difference maker in the 2020 vote because we're going to make sure we inform everybody that they can let their voice be heard, and failure is not an option.
Jalen, what does voter suppression look like to you?
A perfect example took place recently, Carrie, in Kentucky. It was 6 p.m. at night, and so many people were standing in line enthusiastic to vote. And you know what they did? Locked the doors. And you know what the people did? They continued to bang on the doors, continued to bang on the windows. They continued to let it be known they were not going to leave the premises until they got a chance to vote. And you know what ended up happening? They opened those doors and allowed those people to vote. So do not be discouraged. These barriers show you that it matters, and we're here to help you break through them. The same thing with our platforms and voices, Carrie, because you know what's going to happen. At some point, Breonna Taylor is not going to be trending anymore. People are not going to be protesting anymore. But it's still up to us to keep making sure that our voices get heard, and this is one way to do so.
Right, and that is a form of being activated, being an activist. It doesn't have to be protesting. It doesn't have to look like what you think traditionally activism looks like. It's voting. It's that simple.
We now have to understand like this is a critical mass moment for this movement to continue to hold up as much steam for as long as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what this collection is going to hopefully allow for that situation to happen.
Jalen, in today's age of technology, it should be easier to vote.
No doubt. It's like we call these devices smartphones, but yet I can't vote from it. All of the things that we do in our lives are in our phones. All of these barriers are things that people will need to overcome in order to create a level of enthusiasm to vote. And again, this is not political. It's your right to do so. And there's so many times where you feel like somebody may have gotten done unjustly in your community. Pay attention to who the judges are, who's running for Senate, mayor, governor. Pay attention who's running for president. And let's make sure in 2020 we make a difference.
Why is more than a vote so important and invaluable in our community right now?
Well, because right now, I think we have an opportunity to let our voices be heard louder than ever. Anytime you see the mobilization of white kids holding Black Lives Matter signs, that means there's a breakthrough. Now, what happens with that breakthrough is the next step. You're going to look down in your email, Carrie. You're going to see all of these companies telling you how they're going to work on their diversity, how they're looking themselves in the mirror. They need to make change, just like in sports, right? Look on the field and on the court, all those black players. The further you get up, it's like altitude or a ladder. It gets thinner and thinner. And so a lot of people talk about the system being broken. I hate to remind people that it's not broken. It was built this way. And one of our ways to help change the system is to vote. So that's why more than a vote is so very important so we can make sure everybody participates and gives themselves an opportunity to let their voice be heard.
I think it's interesting because you talked about black men being very powerful in the U.S. if they're athletes and entertainers, because for so long those have been the only avenues traditionally to create wealth. The NBA season comes back. What are your feelings on the season coming back in the midst of everything that is happening?
I think you'll see players challenging the establishment more. You're going to see them saying, okay, if you have all of these marketing and promotional deals, how many of them are with minorities? How many people are you employing in NBA? What about certain teams? Who do you have as a minority owner? Or what about the candidates that you have for positions of power? NBA players have proven as blacks that they are now movers and shakers in the game. They're now the dog, not the tail. So if they decide not to play, some of the biggest social changes and conversations have taken place in sports that weren't during the game. Colin Kaepernick was before the game. The Ali Summit was a press conference. So they could mobilize if they chose to. But when and if you do play, challenge the league. Black Lives Matter on the jerseys. Continue to make sure that every time people are watching the game, they're also seeing the movement happen.
Jalen, I appreciate you because you are always entertaining and informative at once. I really, truly am looking forward to the NBA season. Thank you for working with More Than a Vote because your voice, your platform, all of it is needed, my friend. Be safe, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I love and appreciate you. One call away always.
Thank you. Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Every conversation that we had today, I hope was helpful for you. I am so grateful to everyone who came on with me to talk about what's going on in our culture and how we need to change. Huge shout out to Jalen Rose, Bun B, Jason Hayward, Yvonne Orgy, and Russ. Their words were inspiring, but also important and invaluable. I hope your phone is full with all the information that we've been able to place in front of you. Again, you need to check out these resources because they are so important because we want you to vote. That is your voice. It is important. We, the people, want you to vote. So go to morethanavote.org, fairfight.com, and whenweallvote.org. Again, thank you so much for joining us and paying attention because this message, again, is invaluable. I'm Carrie Champion for We the People.